But I
Yeah.
am interested. You mentioned the paranormal fan base, and it's like it's so
Yeah.
true. Whether it's cryptids or for me personally, like I've been looking a lot more into astrology and
Right.
tarot and divination and sort of
Yeah.
more spiritual or quote unquote new agey type of things. Even though the new age is deeply rooted in the old fucking age. You know what I mean?
That's what I. Yeah. Definitely.
Like people who are devotees of that type of practice, it
Right.
comes from a similar place. Like it's very much
Most definitely.
in how your mind is relating to it. Like
With
you have to invest. Like it's not that you have to believe in it, but you have to remove the
yeah.
part of your brain that
Oh, you
says
have
it's not true. Like you can't.
you,
It's
you gotta
I don't
believe
know.
in it. I mean, in all honesty, that's how I respect it. Is like if you don't believe in it, then you're really not talking about it from an angle that we're trying to get to. Because I think
Right.
that we're both.
And it's not about believing or not believing. It's about removing that barrier that you have in yourself, so that whatever the truth is will come right into you.
But with what you're saying, Holiday, I agree wholeheartedly, and I think that the tarot cards, all that, like you said, is an ancient artifact of what we were talking about, and it definitely is. That was a good way to put it when you said that earlier to me,
Uh huh.
and it's all kind of derived of the same paranormal. People that are into the astrology, whether it's Chinese, Western, whatever,
Yeah.
or Egyptian, to each their own as far as cup of tea or flavor. But what kind of I guess what we're trying to talk about and all together is the base of it all, and kind of summarizing it and making it something that makes sense. Like, and if it don't make sense, fuck it, because the ones that don't get it, fuck them. We don't want them. You know what I mean? We want the ones
Yeah.
that get it. And it's a very esoteric is what we're trying. Esoteric experts is how I like to say it. So like it's just a matter of the people that we influence. But
Uh
it's
huh.
a selective few, the scholars or whatever you want to call them. But that selective few has always been real important for me as far as channeling this shit and doing something that's decently halfway decent, whether it's sound, imagery, or just chopping up with you, on that level as far as the content.
Uh huh.
And so, as just saying that, at my own self preferences, I think that I dig it. Like as far as the paranormal shit, I just naturally, like I said, I've been reading about it, just not even, and it's because I naturally am just intrigued by it. So,
Yeah.
with that being said, that's what we want to both be, and you obviously are too. So that's why I was
Uh
gonna
huh.
say on those cards, um, you still do, you're still looking at them, or what? You
Yeah,
still
no,
making?
I've been read. I downloaded the a book, the Complete Guide to Tarot, one of the original kind of like marquee volumes on tarot by Eden Gray, where
Yeah.
it goes into relatively deep symbolism behind the cards. Now, there's obviously a lot more, and it's a whole study in and of itself. I mean, you can't just go to one book or one resource and say you can figure out everything about it. Like it is the
Uh,
same. It's like with it's like with astrology. It's like with cryptid
you're
research.
so
Like you have to develop your own personal relationship with it and develop it yourself because it exists pretty much
you're
within.
so. Well, no, sorry. You're so. You know what Richard Bandler is?
No.
Near linguistic programming. Like you're so like. I'm just saying like the way that you kind of look at a lot of things. I guess it makes sense of a lot of things. It's so methodical, like analytical. It's not a bad thing at all.
Yeah.
It's like completely the opposite of me. And I was looking at that because it's funny because like I guess what you like with a lot of things that you like Stefan a lot too, and kind of in a lot of ways he's like that too. But when it comes down to it, that's just as important, I guess, as trying to do something creative or different, like I'm trying to do on my angle.
Well, it is a creative
So
endeavor, and how you if you approach it by serendipity or just by happenstance, if you're
most
somebody
definitely,
who can just get into that mode without having to think about what that mode is, well, that's great. But for me, and I know there's a lot of other people like that out there too, who are more, of a skeptical nature or maybe more of an analytical nature, like you said. Like I mean, it's comforting to me to look at it in that way and to realize that that's what's going on, and that it's not the knowledge isn't out there, like it and if it is out there, that doesn't mean anything to you. What is important is that you have your own way of approaching it and that you develop this knowledge base through experience and through research and through study. And the tarot is that. I mean, nobody can teach you everything that there is to know about tarot. You have to, it's something that comes from within your own mind because what the cards are speaking to is things that are happening in your own mind.
on a personal subconscious level, right? And
It's
so,
entirely well. It's dealing with the relationship between your conscious mind, your subconscious mind, and the over mind, like the spiritual high mind. The mind of God or whatever you'd want to call it. And
so
if you look pictorially, symbolically, metaphorically, the cards speak to that on such a deep level,
agree, yeah.
so deep. Yeah.
And I seen that, bro. For me personally, I seen that a couple years back when I was with this chick when I just got out of prison, like I guess 10 years now. This older chick named Gwen, right? And she was all into that, like real into the just the universal, like the tarot cards, all of that. And she helped me kind of, I guess, recognize that on that level. And when you are on that level, even if it's just for a brief moment, you kind of can understand the whole
You get
ideology
the
and the
sense
whole
of it, right? You get this. I
the
mean, because
belief system, yeah,
yeah,
the belief system, and it is a belief system. I think if you look at it from that kind of term, that standpoint, for me, I do because on a programming standpoint, but it's a system of belief that your brain or whatever your reality can integrate with, and it's definitely not just within you though. It's on a universal scale, so it's not
right.
just, what I mean. It's not just it's not it's not so solitary. It's more like on a dynamic scale of and it's basically it's not like the human mind, but what I'm saying, like consciousness is a whole different degree. Anyway, but what I was going to mention to you about all that in general was on this paranormal shit. I think we should kick a motherfucking beat. I was just,
Hold on. Well, okay,
and
yeah,
then nigga said you need to go to sleep.
I
This
told her.
dude, these motherfuckers out here, holiday.
Uh
I don't
huh.
even never even met these dudes. He's like, this dude. I don't remember freestyling with this dude that we were locked up with. And he's like, this dude over here is a lyrical monster. I'm like, how does this dude even know? Because for me, I'm at the house and I'm on my computer. That's all people know. But it throws people off. Even the most cool, well-respected people that
Yeah.
I've met, they're still like surprised by. I think I
Yeah.
surprised myself.
No, well,
But
that's what I mean. That's kind of the flow state. That's what I'm talking about. When
yeah,
you get into divination or reading tarot or
yeah,
whatever it is, whatever kind of mental
it's the
exercise you're
same.
working on,
It's the
and
flow.
there's something to do with the dream state too, like I had mentioned to you before. It's something I've
Most
been trying to put a lot more focus into as well, and they're
most
related because that's where you're dreaming.
yeah.
That's where your subconscious is bubbling up into your conscious mind when you've let that barrier down when you're asleep, that conscious mind barrier, that ego that tries to separate everything into categories and be overly
Yeah,
analytical.
it's dead. It's sleeping.
Once you
Yeah,
remove those barriers,
it's
that's
a
when the
whole nother
subconscious
world.
starts to come up. And when you get into reading tarot and you kind of have a grasp of what the cards are trying to tell you, it's a similar state. You'll
Right.
start to notice things that you just cut, like things come into your mind that you never would have thought of otherwise,
Bro,
because you're letting go of that barrier, that little separation that you have in your mind between the conscious and the unconscious.
yeah.
And that
You can
unconscious
only do
part is the
that.
thing that is everybody
Well,
experiences it.
and it's crazy, kind of, now that you mentioned that, is why human beings, we have to have sleep. Without sleep, and it's funny you said you have to have sleep and it's funny because with sleep, it opens what you're talking about right now, which is hugely important, I think, for us to even function. You know what I mean? Like, as far as how they can't really scientifically, I don't think, prove why we have to sleep. Like,
No,
and
they don't. No, they
they
don't
say
know.
like the human brain, if you don't sleep within, I think, 24, like a little bit over 24 hours, your memory loss is like you can't
Yes.
remember. It's crazy the malfunctioning, and so that in itself is, me. I'm over here doing what I do, but it gets even more intriguing on that level because you're talking about flamboyance and different being more in tune with all that on sleeping, your subconscious and conscious. And I've always kind of known dreams are super important, but if you
Yeah.
taking, like I'm saying, taking the time to put it all together into some sort of science and experiment like we're doing, I think that's super dope. That's probably more creative than I could ever be.
Yeah,
So
well, calling it a science, I guess, is. I mean, yes, that's true.
that's
Well,
the
one
creative part.
person that, if you're getting into reading, and if you're going to have time to be doing some reading coming up,
Yeah,
somebody you ought to look into, and somebody I've been looking into a little bit, is Carl Jung, a psychoanalyst from the early 1900s who was like a protege of Sigmund Freud. But he developed his own psychological model that basically integrates everything we're talking about here. It allows for a window to spirituality, and it allows for the existence of all these things in collective unconscious, like the term synchronicity, the term
yeah.
collective unconscious. These are all terms that he popularized.
Send me
Um,
a link. Send me a link on him.
well, I will. I'll hit you up with that after we're done. But basically, his key, the sort of, the focal point of his psychoanalytical model is dream analysis,
Yeah.
and he
Okay.
firmly believed that your unconscious is using your dreams to speak to you and tell you things about yourself that you don't want to acknowledge consciously,
Right.
because
Right.
as we grow and as our minds develop, we are in a sort of profane
Conditioned state, bro. We
three-dimensional
condition.
society where we're forced to
We can't. I mean,
segment
that's
parts of ourselves, we're forced to compartmentalize, we're forced to
beyond our
repress
measure. Straight up.
memories and emotions and feelings and traumas were forced to repress all those things, and they get sort of buried into the subconscious. And
Yeah.
it's sort of like it's those things where, like, you think back to your childhood, you think to times where you've experienced really
Nostalgia.
intense traumatic events. Your
Right.
brain, you're aware of them on a certain level, but you've developed this
Yeah.
sort of separation where
Fight or
you're not
flight.
consciously acknowledging them in order to function in everyday society. But
Most
the longer
definitely.
you go on with that, the more that those things sort of bubble up and they grow and they start to affect your conscious mind too. um,
Well,
and
they
they'll
affect
be
your
things that you
mind.
project out onto other people. So a lot of people have anger issues, or
Yeah.
they'll see anger in other people as something that triggers them, or whatever it happens to be. And this is coming from a repressed subconscious experience of anger, or like where somebody was angry with you, or you felt angry and you couldn't rationalize it, so you repressed it. And so now this part of your subconscious is projecting out through your ego, and you're pretending that
Right.
it's something in the external world, but really what's bothering you is that
I
exists
mean,
within you. And so the goal then for people is to integrate those things into their conscious personality in a process that Jung called individuation.
let me
And so
ask you
that's
this
the
here real
ultimate
quick.
goal of a
Let me
healthy
ask you,
psychological person.
yeah, no, let me ask you this. Have you ever thought about doing the tarot card kind of on that level of like a therapy or
Yeah,
relief?
that's the main reason that I do it.
Okay, I
That's
see
the
what you're
like a lot of, and I won't get into this too heavily, but in the popular sense, like a lot of what people use tarot for, apparently, what seems to me at least, like online and social media and stuff, is for like relationship therapy and like, oh, what is your partner thinking about you right now? When is
saying.
your
Right.
next when are you going to find your true love? Stuff like that, which I guess
Yeah,
it can be used for that, and it is sort of interesting, but ultimately I would say that's a limiting modality.
that's the
And
money maker right there.
exactly. And that's, you know what, and you can't really, I'm not going to hate on the hustle, but I got a different angle that I'm trying to approach it from.
I was just saying maybe as a suggestion, you could probably throw that out there here and there, like do free readings or whatever for
Well,
people.
I have an Instagram channel that I do tarot readings on almost every day.
Yeah, really.
I don't know if you're on Instagram or not, but I don't
Uh,
use it. I don't do it like that. I use it for a tool for self-reflection, tool for
yeah,
self-improvement, a tool for exploring my own psyche.
but
Because I think
also
ultimately, I think that's what it's about to me, or at least that's what I find to be the most interesting about it,
let me
is
say
that it
something.
does, like, I can lay out these cards and it'll tell me what I need to know about myself, and it'll give me encouragement and guidance on how to properly conduct myself in the world and how to be psychologically healthy.
You said self 1,000 times in that, and I'm just saying this with critical criticism and love. Beyond yourself, see, once you, I guess, understand yourself, but let's try to. I'm just trying to say, like, try to adapt and doing it, like doing it for individuals you're close with, just to escape from that stuff. Because me, as a fuck up drug addict, motherfucking felon, I know all about being selfish and like consumed by the self. But sometimes that can become
Well,
self-destructive, my
no,
friend.
but what you're
I'm just,
we're
I'm
I
just
think we're
speaking to
talking
me
about
from.
two different things, though, to be honest.
No, I'm not,
um
brother. All right, I'm talking
well,
about
you're
self-destructive
no, I know.
patterns
Well,
that you might be. All right, now me and my brother talked about this too, and he knows you a lot
okay.
better than I.
Lay it on me.
I'm speaking. I'm just saying straight up. Remember we talked about that ego shit.
Yeah.
That's your biggest demon. So
Hmm.
remember that, and that's all. That's right now. I feel like when I'm speaking about that, automatically you're conditioned to defend that as a defense mechanism because it's something that we're conditioned to, like you're saying, at an early stage where our mind was ready, and then it becomes a bigger, like you're saying, it develops into something worse, and then it actually starts controlling our inner mechanics as
Uh-huh.
how our mind works to everything. And so, and when you're talking about like giving some people a remedy to that, like an antidote, even if it's like relationship therapy, whatever, whatever approach you're taking with that, whatever method you want to go with it, you have to be able to escape from yourself just for a little bit. I'm just saying that as a friend because I don't want it to become something where you're so consumed by self-analyzing yourself and trying to understand this and this and this. When it's such a more broad thing that we're
Uh-huh.
talking about, and you have such the intellect to grasp it,
No,
that
you're
if
not wrong, and maybe we're just talking about different stages in the process. I think maybe. But
yeah,
what I was telling, and we talked about this last time too, is that the ego doesn't
yeah,
go away when you acknowledge it. You acknowledge how it's harming you, how it might be influencing you in a negative way. The goal is not to, well, I mean, the goal can be to get rid of it if that's the path you want to take. But I think what's more practical, maybe, and more useful in the long run is using your ego mechanisms to influence your life in a positive way instead of letting
yeah,
it limit you and hinder you and fuck your life up all the time. Because it can definitely fuck your life up. But
straight up,
that's
straight up.
because I would say that that's probably a majority because you're not using it consciously. You're letting your ego tell you what to do instead of directing your ego into achieving things that are useful and helpful and encourage your own growth. And
No,
this is that individuation process I'm talking about. When you draw those
yeah,
subconscious repressed things up into yourself, up into your ego, then you can acknowledge them, and then you're not a slave to those things that you don't want to look at in your own life.
I'm a slave to one thing. I'm a slave to art, and that's it, baby boy.
Well, I'd say you're a slave to a bit more than that, as we all are. But the
As
point
you
is
would,
not to not be a slave to it.
Liza.
The point is
You had
to
it, Liza.
the point is
You would
to
say that.
accept that that is who you are,
I've
integrate,
accepted
be
it.
conscious of those things, and but then work towards using them in a healthy way instead of in a
Right.
destructive way.
Progress is the main
So I'm not
perfected
getting caught
obsession.
up in that. I'm not. But you have to before you, if your goal, even if your goal was to relinquish the ego, you're
Yeah,
not going to be able to do that until you understand what it is and what it's doing.
I agree.
And that's
I
what the
agree
cards can
wholeheartedly.
show you in a way too. But it's not just the ego; it's the subconscious, the conscious,
You're
and the
right.
divine. They all, and
And
this is
so
part of the symbolism of the cards is that they have to travel up through each other in order, so that
yeah.
you can't say I don't need this, I don't need that. You have to
Well,
integrate them all holistically in order for it to make sense, in order for you to go to the next level.
I guess what I was getting at is whenever you're ready at that point, I would be on. I mean, it would be really cool if you could do the cards for like an individual like me, from what you understand and
Yeah.
what you're talking about, all of that. That's kind of where I was getting at because for me, I'm interested in it a lot, very much so, but I'll never be on the level that you're on with it because it's a natural thing that you're intrigued by. It's a natural energy. I call it creative, whatever it is, but it's natural for you. So you'll always have that as a predominant. And so for someone like me to come to you, whether I'm seeking relationship there, whatever it is, if I'm asking you like to do it for an individual like me, I guess one way you could kind of look at it, you could break it down like how would you analyze another individual.
Hmm.
And I'm just trying to break it down into maybe some homework because you send me homework, I'm gonna send you homework on the best ways we can. But
Yeah.
whether it's visual thesauruses or soundscapes or crazy werewolf imagery, it doesn't
Uh
matter.
huh.
But the homework has to be done
Right. And
for
well,
me, and for me at least, and that's a big thing. Is like I'm talking about getting onto you about you being self. But at the end of the day, what I'm really talking about is myself too. So we both,
Well, it's not
I
so much
guess,
about being self-centered as it is about being
yeah,
self-conscious. And to speak
yeah,
to what you mentioned earlier, as far as using a reading to analyze somebody, it's not really
hmm
what you do. What you'll notice, and and you'd have to have a little bit of exposure to it to kind of understand this, is that I mean, I
right,
don't pick the cards that come out. You know what I mean? There can be
yeah,
some influencing factors, like it's called psychokinetics. Like if I have an intention, the way that
I
I
got you.
touch the cards, the way I shuffle them, the way I handle them can have an impact on what comes out because, everything's deterministic in that way. But what you'll
So
find is that once you start
yeah.
pulling the cards out, they tell their own story. Like you
But
don't
how do
like
you
ideally
channel that though?
huh?
How do you channel that? How do you channel like for a complete stranger if
Uh-huh.
you have no vibe with them, no link? How do you channel that energy as far as to know whatever's guiding you to pick the cards? I see what you're saying, but I'm just saying like as an individual, as you know me pretty well, I guess, kind of this and that. It would be like I'm just interested on kind of seeing what your angle would be like if you were to do a reading on me, whether it's
Uh-huh.
just a generalization, maybe not today or any time in the future, whenever you're ready, like to do that, that would be super cool to me because I think it would help me better understand
Yeah.
everything about it with what you're talking about and more. You know what I mean? In
Right. Well,
that
what I would
sense.
say is that it I guess saying that it's generalized is kind of a too broad a way to put it. A lot of the imagery and a lot of the symbolism and the meanings of the cards are what you'd call archetypal, which means they speak to experiences and modalities and uh, behaviors and
What's the
actions
word
that are
again?
archetypal, that are common to
Archetypal.
everybody. So these
Yeah.
things
Okay.
are like innate in your mind. And so I guess what you really try to do is get an intuitive sense of the person, like feel their energy,
Right.
empathize with them, look at them directly and kind of see what kind of person they are just based on the feeling, and then use that to inform how you read the cards, how you're
Yeah.
projecting the archetypal imagery
Gotcha.
out there. And what really
Right.
happens, what the really interesting part is not what I'm
Thousand
saying or the
updates.
reader is saying. That when I start talking about the cards, you'll start to integrate them into your own consciousness personally. Like you won't have to say anything. You'll hear what I'm saying and you'll see how it fits into your life. And that's where the value of the reading comes in.
And me personally, I think that we could integrate technology with that whole thing what you're talking about. As far as when the time comes, you could broadcast like doing free readings for people, how you're talking about it right now, vibing and all that. Like I'm just saying we could impose like whether it's a video stream, however you need to channel the energy or before you do the reading on this person. You can even have your own constellation. I guess that's kind of, and I'm in that mindset right now personally because I got my buddy here. I got to go do this little business thing, so I'm kind of like in that money making business
Right.
entrepreneurial type mindset right now. But at the same time, I also need some sleep, like you
Yeah.
said.
Um,
I hate the
and of
word
course,
occult. I don't know why I hate that word
well,
occult. I don't know why.
why?
I guess because of how it's always been used in context of just like this stuff here. Like
Hmm.
whenever I think of occult, just automatically, even I automatically think like in a like a bad way because not like overwhelmingly bad, but I could just see I sense myself off the top like just being how I guess it's been a condition. But what I'm saying
Yeah.
is occult. I don't know. I don't like how it when I look at
Well, it
this
has
kind
a
of
negative
stuff.
connotation, I guess.
Right, right. I
But
mean, it
all it
doesn't have to
means,
be. But yeah.
occult just means it's hidden knowledge.
Yeah. Okay.
So
Yeah.
it's kind of badass in that respect.
Right. No, most definitely.
And
Yeah, straight up.
esoteric, I mean, it's esoteric too. Esoteric basically just means like
I know what.
it's you have to be initiated into it. But
Shoot.
no,
Yeah.
what's tripping me out, and I guess this sort of flows into the the news cycle, social media thing, and the occult, and like the sort of like group rejection of that is like I'm seeing a lot of people online today. Like I follow a few different groups for like spirituality and
Right.
higher thinking, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
And the more time goes on, and the more like it's becoming increasingly so in the past like
Accepted.
couple of months, is that
Yeah.
well, it's being accepted by a lot of people, but I'd say I see more and more people rejecting it and like making fun of it, and
Really?
that's an interesting thing. Yeah, yeah, that's an interesting thing to me.
Recently? For you?
Yeah, I'd say it's been coming up more and more recently. Like I'm seeing
Yeah.
more people shitting on it recently of late.
Huh. See, for me, it's like in the beginning, like back in the day, whenever it seemed like that's how it was. But nowadays, in my life, I don't really get people around, but in general, I would say,
Yeah,
just for me, from my personal, I'd say it's more like accepted, almost like the perception of what it is only perceived by some people, selected people, whoever they are, but not like
right.
in general. In general, I don't know. Like I was saying just a minute ago, like I don't know much shit about it, but I could feel how I've been conditioned or programmed, whatever,
Yeah, you
from
have. We all
what I'm
have
saying, from our roots,
to be
like
skeptical. Yeah.
yeah, to automatically think of a negative way when I hear it. I don't
Right.
know. It's
No, it's
weird when I
true.
recognize that shit, dude. It's because I'm like, and I try to keep myself in check with that kind of stuff. But we were talking about it a little bit yesterday. You were about how those things, early on or whatever can over time, have change or effects on us on an intermechanical level, on a level that we don't, our subconscious state that we don't even really, we're not even aware of it until either later, much later or whatever, or dreams or you know how to break that
Right. Well, we are connected to it ultimately, whether we choose to accept it or to reject it. But it
straight
does
up.
require it does require you to abandon a little bit of your rational mind, and the
Yeah,
rationality is what I think people are so stuck in these days, and like
yeah,
as though like because that's what the foundation of science is and
I got you.
logic, I guess you could say. But ultimately, where has that gotten us? Where has pure rationality really gotten us in the past 300 years? I mean,
Yeah, it
it's
got
got
us to
us
the
it's got
moon,
us some
Caesar.
good. Well,
It
yeah,
got
it
us
has
to the
gotten us to
moon.
the it got us to the moon. It got us, I
Yeah,
guess individual liberty, if you could even describe that to it. But
yeah,
it's about a balance though. It's like because it's also gotten us a lot of closed-mindedness and a lot of rejection of nature. It's gotten us a
yeah,
lot of denial of the self, and
right.
I think that's what has to be brought back in is understanding those things again and accepting
Yeah,
that part of human behavior, and
I
that's
think
what I see.
that's
Like I think
important.
it's right, and
Real
as we go
important.
on through this whole
Era.
melodrama with the coronavirus and the
Yeah,
political, everything, the battle lines, I guess the battle
right,
lines or the lines in the sand are being drawn to
right.
where people are going to have to they don't
Make a
have to,
decision.
but people are increasingly wanting to put themselves on one side or the other. You're either
Right.
totally left brain or totally right brain, totally masculine or totally feminine. You can't there's no
Exactly.
balance, there's
Straight
no
up.
fluidity, there's no symbiosis between the two.
That's
And
why it's so important. right
That's
now.
what I think.
You know,
That's what has fucked us up. That's what, and honestly, I think
yeah,
that's sort of what technology has exacerbated
has
to a degree.
done. I agree. I totally agree
Yeah,
with you. I was about to just say that. Actually, you took the words out of my mouth because I think that what you're talking about right now is not. It's a disease, and what you're talking about basically is some people, like you said, left or right brain, but it's also now it's like like in the past it was evolution of the physical, but we're not gonna evolve anymore physically, but on a conscious level, I think consciousness itself, it's like you say left brain people, right brain people. I think it's also coming down to where there's so much separation, like you said, so much chaos and no balance that bringing these things we're talking about today, like the tarot cards, is so important right now for us because we have to be. It's like that's our weaponry. And in mine, it's in my eyes, I look at it as like you're a blacksmith, and you're sharpening my awareness,
exactly.
you know
Yeah,
what I'm saying?
yeah.
And we're
Well, me
growing
too.
with
I'm
it.
doing it for myself as well, and I mean, if if it's helpful
Yeah,
to anybody else, then that's great. Um,
yeah.
but yeah, I don't know, because what you do have to let that part of your ego guard down where you can accept something that seems irrational on the surface and not have to apply logic to it, not have to apply
Yeah, that's
scientific
easy.
thinking necessarily. Even
That's
though
so
science is an
easy for
aspect of
me.
it, like you can apply
Yeah,
science to any of these things that we're talking about, and
right.
there's elements of it that are scientifically explainable. But at the
It's all
root of it,
science. Yeah, yeah.
at the well, yeah, you could say, I mean, yeah, and
But yeah, at the root
I
of
forget
it,
who said it, but any sufficiently advanced technology would be
it's
indistinguishable
some
from
sort of
magic.
science. Yeah, right, right,
And
right.
so that's could be what that type of stuff is like. You know, we
I
can't.
agree.
I mean,
I agree.
you can track the positions of planets, through the night sky, and you can say, oh well, this we can,
Right.
methodologically, mathematically trace how planets move through the sky. But if that doesn't imply that there's any
Connection. Right,
any energetic force that's being applied, but we know
right.
scientifically that planets do produce vibrational waves. They do have a resonance and frequencies that they output. I mean, that's indisputable. So to not marry those two things and say that based on the position and how far
Right.
away the planet is or what part of the universe it happens to be between us and
I think
it does there's you to say that there's no energetic link with that is sort of
It's,
absurd.
it's ludicrous. I think technology, in its core, at the end of the day, is a form of magic. Like you're talking about, it's a
Yeah,
form of, you know what I mean? That was, and like you're saying, like on a deeper sense of it, that it really is. Because look at the ancient, the ancient artifacts, ancient wisdom. They already knew what we're talking about. We newly discovered new shit. Like they already knew that on a different plane, though. You know what I mean?
exactly, the
They
intuitive
didn't
level,
have
and that's
right,
mhm.
right, exactly. Intuition is
And
what,
that's the thing that people I think are so disconnected with these days.
of
And I think
course.
that's unfortunately for a certain percentage of the population, it seems to be increasing, and people are
Yeah,
becoming
I
more
agree.
and more heavily reliant on purely rational thinking.
And we can't
When
let that shit happen to us, man.
and it can have disastrous consequences, just like
Right,
totally irrational thinking can have disastrous consequences too. And so I think balance
right.
is what's necessary, and I think that's ultimately what we're headed for. But I think it's sort of like a growing pain of moving into that,
Right,
and
I
that has an
agree.
astrological component to it as well
Yeah,
because people talk
foundation for
about
sure.
the age of Aquarius, moving out of the age
Yeah,
of Pisces, and like you think about it, you don't know. I mean, the scale of the universe, or even our Milky Way galaxy, is like
right. Unfathomable.
unbelievably
Yeah,
vast.
right, right.
Yeah, and to think that there's no amount of energy that's
It's
being
ludicrous.
produced out there that's coming into us, that we could be moving, like our planet could just be moving through energetic fields, and
Yeah,
we can't even detect or we feel the influence of, but we don't
it's
ascribe it
crazy.
to that.
You're no, I feel exactly what you're saying, and you're right. Like it's almost like it's to me, it's like why can people? I don't know. For me, naturally, I guess I've always kind of been open-minded to intuition and intuitive things, like what we're talking about right now. Like even if you're saying like if you like for you, I imagine because you're really in my opinion, like I said, it's not bad. You're real analytical, and that's a good thing. That's a really good thing. But at the end of the day, for you, it's probably a little bit harder to be able to just say, like for me, it's easy for me to say, okay, I don't need proof of it. I can just trust it because I'm lazy, and also just because naturally it's easier for me as my sign, and however you want to look at it. But
Uh huh.
as you know, what I mean, and that's just one thing. But saying that is what I was going to say is this is that watch out for them drones, boy.
Right. Well, no, and well,
I lost my train of thought. I'm sorry. Sleep
well,
deprivation.
no. I mean, it's somebody who
Aggravating.
you would call a drone. I guess is somebody who's just operating under whatever the majority paradigm is
Protocol
at the
B.
time, and they're
What's
not
the
questioning it if they're
protocol,
not
Holiday? What's the
exactly.
protocol?
So yeah, and people do need a protocol, but
They
that's can
are.
be a crutch just as much as anything else. I think for me personally, it's not hard for me to accept it. The hard part
Yeah.
was continuing to deny it, and I was noticing that the more I was denying those types of things,
Right.
but the worse outcomes I was getting in things in my life.
Because of
Like,
that denial. Yeah, yeah, straight up,
yeah,
bro.
not
And
even
that's a
denial, but
hard.
maybe just like just ignorance, really. Like I was just, I don't know.
Yeah.
I had tricked
No, I
myself
feel
into
you.
thinking that I didn't have to put any sort of thought into that whatsoever. But
Bro, it's so hard. Yeah,
since I've
yeah.
opened myself up back up to it,
Right.
I mean, it's been just like riding a bike, like
Right.
slipping back
Coasting.
into it, and it's like, oh, well, it makes perfect sense. All you have to do is just
Yeah.
accept that
It's hard
it's not completely explainable, but it doesn't have to be because it's like a
right.
relationship that you have with a part of your own mind that
Straight
is
up.
reflected in bigger things around you.
For sure, spoken like a true poet. But and I'm proud of you on that level, bro. I mean, because I know what you're talking. Like, it's really hard for. It's really easy to say, yeah, I can see that about myself. But when it comes down to it, like for me and other people, probably can't even see a lot of things about myself because I'm that denial we're talking about. And you
Yeah.
beat that, I think, or you've come to
Well,
a
I'm
place.
on the path
Right, you're in war with it,
integrating it.
and that's
Hopefully,
cool
yeah.
though. That to me, like that shows that like because I already know we all have our own obstacles, whatever demons we call it,
Right.
whatever we want. But at the end of the day, are we really trying to improve ourselves as a person? And I think you are with your family and everything you got going there too is also probably helping you on an influential, positive level. But the one thing with us, we start talking about so many different areas and things. I'm like, I don't know where I want to go with it. Like I don't
Mm-mm-mm.
know. It's because it's like there's so much that I want to say, but then it's like it's just really
Yeah.
because I can't control my excitement with it sometimes.
No, that's good. That's where you want to be if you can keep it
Yeah,
there. Well, that's why I wrote a few things down, like that I
yeah.
wanted to like circle back to. But and we're
So,
on it right now. I mean, so I would say that
oh yeah, we're on.
it's that denial of that part of yourself that's causing a lot of these problems, and I think technology is exacerbating it because if you use technology, if you use social media
Mm-hmm.
and the internet, all the resources on the internet, you can use
For
it to
weapons,
expand
dude.
you can use it to
Yeah,
expand your intuitive understanding of the world, you can use it to expand your spirituality, but
straight
just as
up.
easily you can get locked into the materialistic
Straight
paradigm
up.
and never have to look outside of it.
And
And
my
that's
dude, that which I'm sorry to interrupt you, but what you just said right there for me has always kind of been like a personal thing. How I've looked at it as far as what's going to happen there, as far as the future of people. Like for me, someone that loves technology, but at the end of the day, I know that it's probably doing a lot more harm. It definitely is doing a lot more harm
yeah.
but it's not technology's fault. It's our fault because
No,
of our
yeah.
awareness of it and how we use it. I
Right.
feel like so people look at that, they're like, oh, this dude's out of there or whatever. But the depth of that is because I love technology so much is that all I want to do is like sometimes just help people have a little bit more broader understanding of what it is and maybe like you're saying if they're not aware of how it's controlling then basically technology is evolving more than the consciousness or awareness of us. And when that starts happening, because technology is a brute force, bro, it'll never stop evolving. And that's why you say maybe it's mad. Like I never thought of that, and that's actually
Uh-huh.
makes a lot of sense to me because I'm getting more into this. What we're talking, I'm definitely naturally wanting to learn more about what you know and what I'm looking and finding and just going with the flow with it because I feel like it's very important for us for the ones that we love. You know what I mean? I really do. I feel
Yeah.
like, and if we don't do that right now or soon, we're gonna be
Yeah, I think
walking around like straight
it's
up,
coming down
dude.
to the wire for sure. And I
For
think,
real.
well, it's I don't know that technology doesn't have its own uh
Agenda.
doesn't have its own agenda. No,
but
because
but
it's
but you
ultimately
don't
the
know that. You don't know that because technology. I'm sorry. I'm always like love it, but
uh-huh.
technology, in my opinion, is actually. I feel like not no not to say no fucking crazy ass but when you really think about it you know what I mean like how Steve Jobs and all these innovators that use technology and try to build it and and create it and make it better. I'm saying like if you look at it try to look at it like that and I try to but sometimes I can't but what I'm really trying to say is technology. I mean don't we have to always be well equipped of what it is, how we're using it, and our awareness of it. Because if not, technology will be basically controlling our thought process. And I
Yeah.
say that like my dad or even the generation above your dad, like that generation, they're hopeless with technology, bro. And I say that
Yeah.
because they have, you know what I mean? Like they really are. Not everyone, but in that sense, yeah, it's a force to reckon with, and I love it, but it's
Well,
definitely
that
killing
right, and that
us.
force though, that force that you do
Yeah,
have to reckon with doesn't come from the outside. I think that
yeah,
the technology is just an extension of your own psychology, and the way that you interact with it is
for
based on
sure,
your own awareness of your
for sure,
psychology.
for sure.
So,
Fuck yeah,
if you're a
most
person who's locked into denial, if you're a
definitely.
person who's locked into
Right,
self-rejection, you're going to
got
use
you.
technology to expand on that aspect of your personality. Like you,
Right,
there's an infinite amount of distractions in technology that you can use to literally just waste your entire life. Or,
I
I mean,
think.
you can avail yourself of all the information and use it in a constructive way
I mean, we
once you've
could,
opened yourself up. Well, it goes either way. It's a double-edged sword, absolutely. And but
yeah,
I think that what technology is or how we perceive it is that feedback loop between it and our own psyche. So like
right.
it's just an amplifier for whatever your condition is.
But it's
So
dangerous. It's dangerous though.
if your
That
condition
makes
is
it so
right, yeah, because
dangerous.
if your condition is denial and ego
Right.
insanity, then yeah, it's
Okay.
going to amplify that. And I think that's evidence all around us when we, just turn on any news outlet, and that's what you'll
Most
see,
definitely. And
just
that's how they're
absolute
using tech. Right. Exactly. So
insanity.
exactly. And it's programmed it, and it's basically spreading like like you said, a disease. Worried about COVID, we need to be worried about what we're talking about right now, which and it's true. I
Mhm.
said that. I mean, I recognize that in some smaller way. A couple years back, I was, I don't know, I was in the room for like a month straight, didn't talk to nobody, and I went to
Yeah.
Walmart but I was working on this programming thing for like, consistent out, whatever. But so when I stepped out, I noticed after just being stuck in a room, just programming steadily, whatever, that my mind process was stuck on that. When I stepped out in Walmart and was like around people, I noticed that maybe I was just tripping, but everybody that I was seeing, I recognized they were starting to act more and more like apps on their phone. And at that
Yeah.
time, you
No,
know what I
dude,
mean?
you're right. That you're not tripping. That's really how it is, man.
And it's like I was seeing it like a syntax, you know what I mean? Because and
Yeah.
that's how I understood kind of where I was at. But I was like, damn, that's when I kind of was like, something's
Well,
coming. It's like people
people
they're not
are
ready.
operating on a programming base. Like we're programming ourselves through our interactions with technology, and it's
Right.
influencing our behavior. It's influencing how we actually perceive the physical world.
That's why.
Like
That's why. No, that's why. I'm sorry, I keep interrupting. But that's why I
no,
keep saying like technology really is. I think evolving. Like I think it's already much like you said. How can it have its own agenda? Well, I think that it's feeding off of something beyond what we're beyond this physical. I think technology is really starting to feed off of, like you said, people's personal denial, people's personal um, what the connection with the consciousness, the connection with all of the
right.
universal truths and laws, the shit that I can't fathom, but I
It's a
definitely know.
subconscious like
Yeah,
amplifier.
right. And that makes it very
And that's where
badass.
all
I
the
mean,
routine behaviors come from, like people who are in a cult or people who are in
yeah,
not a cult but a cult. People who
right,
are like totally under the direction and guidance and
right.
unwitting participation in something that's to their own detriment.
Yeah,
That's
straight
like
up.
that's a program. You know what I'm saying? Like people are they're having their
It most definitely is.
reprogrammed,
Yeah,
brainwashing, whatever you want to call it.
most definitely
Um,
is. Yeah.
and technology can do the same thing to you.
I love technology.
Well, yeah, of course. I mean, it's the ultimate like Pandora's box, I think.
You don't
But
love it though. You don't love it.
no, I well,
You used it
I
like a
don't
dirty
love.
tramp. You used it like a dirty tramp, and you went to college with it, and then you said fuck it and threw it in the damn. I'm just like,
Yeah, well, because as soon as
but
I
I'm
got out
just
into the
saying, like
world and
for
started dealing with
me,
people who were locked into an addiction to technology,
yeah,
it like
turned
it totally grossed me out.
right
Yeah, because I
straight
saw
up.
like
I mean,
how mindless and ignorant people can be in their relationship with it.
yeah, no, I feel you there. I mean, that's because you're a real ass dude, and you didn't let that money, whatever. But I was just fucking with you about the money thing. But technology, you didn't tell me we were gonna do a technology talk this morning. I would have
Yeah,
prepared.
well,
Hey, but
that's kind of where I wanted to take it. Yeah,
damn, that's what's okay. Well, I like to go that angle if we can, but
because technology, I mean, ultimately is an occult artifact. It is an esoteric system.
yeah,
Because
most
it does
definitely
not on the base level. Yeah, you can just open Facebook and scroll through your bullshit for a few hours,
modern. Yeah, yeah,
but it has such a depth to it that is for only for the initiated. You know what I mean?
right, right, and that's why you're saying let's break this shit down. I think it goes back to the alchemy of technology. I think the when we're talking about as it being a form of magic or however, I think that to
Yeah.
me, I never really looked at it like that, and that's what's kind of got me kind of rocking on it because I was just gonna say I think that's really interesting, and I never really looked at it like that, like I said, but I really want to
Yeah.
broaden my whole perspective of what magic is, like what you're doing, and kind of
Hmm.
the potions and all these things that you're doing out there. Uh,
Yeah.
I'm just
Well, I
saying,
was
no,
just
I'm
kind of
like, I'm
kidding
down
about that,
with
but I mean, on the
it.
real though, if
That's
you, I
cool,
mean, think
dude.
about it. Look at it this way: like if I put chamomile in a tea, and I
Yeah,
know that chamomile is going to help me feel sleepy and help me go to sleep, then I'm imbuing it with an intent of making me want to go to sleep, and then I brew it, and then I drink it, and
magic.
I'm re-intaking my own intent of wanting to be sleepy, and
Yeah,
that's part of the way that it works. I mean, yeah, there's chemicals in it that help you with that, but you're amplifying
yeah.
it by using your intent,
I
and
follow you.
that
Yeah.
feedback loop that happens in your mind is what you could call
Right.
magic.
Right. Okay. I feel. See, that's what I'm saying. I knew you were on some shit over there. I knew. Like that makes sense. I never really thought of it like that. So
But
yeah. Like
technology works the exact same way. If you go onto Facebook and you're looking to get into political arguments with somebody, everything you see is gonna be through that lens of like somebody's
hmm
challenging your worldview, somebody's like
right.
trying to threaten your sense of self, which is just a
And
construct
right.
at the same
Right.
time.
And that's why you say, like, now that it's coming to where it is controlling our psyche and our thought process, technology in general, whether it's Facebook or whatever, modern technology, it definitely is. Because of that, we got to have some, I feel like, defense, something that's going to help us either understand it or whatever however we're using it, but don't let it start using us. And it already is,
Right.
obviously, and we can't help that. But I'm saying, you know, it's crazy though. It's and I was fucking with you about the drones and potions and shit, but it's
No,
funny,
but I
but
mean,
it's also
if you're
real
not
though.
if you're not taking conscious control of that process, then you are like a drone, and you're able to just be utilized and manipulated by
Straight
any
up.
force around you to get
Speak
to help them. You know what I'm saying? And instead
straight
of
up.
helping yourself and using that own, because that thing happens in your brain, whether it's directed by you or directed by
Yeah, right.
the Zuck.
Straight
Um,
up.
so
Straight
I
up.
want to use it. I want to use it myself. I don't want to give that over to somebody else. I
I,
want to
I
take control of it personally,
straight
so that
up,
I
boy.
can get the results that I want in my life out of it, instead of just
Well,
investing my attention and my money into some app and giving somebody
exactly.
else abundance.
Nah, that's not our style. I think what I would love to do, in my personal, is to use technology in a way that will help us grow with what we're doing right now, the Outcast, broadcast, whatever we're doing. You know me, I would like to find a way that I can use it or whatever, utilize it to help not only spread like the awareness, but just spread the positive kind of message we are trying to kind of build. But at the same time, that's just because I'm a tech. I love fucking. That's my shit. So
Yeah.
I'm always gonna be like always on that on top of no matter what. But these days, dude, I'm really trying to branch into something like something completely experimental, something different I never would do, and that's probably the hardest process for me as far as
Hmm.
learning. You know what I mean? I mean, the obstacle blocks as far as me trying to get myself to, I don't know, be open minded to it. Maybe I don't know, but
Right. Well, that's
I
what the
definitely
key is.
want to.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so maybe that's what my challenges are as far as on my end. But
I
you
think
know,
cultivating that creativity definitely starts with
yeah,
letting that rational barrier down that you have in your mind that's
right,
blocking you from connecting with those more dreamlike parts of your subconscious, because that's where all the creative shit's coming from. Like
yeah,
you're not going to
right,
think of in a
right.
logical
I'm gonna feel it.
step by
Yeah,
step ABC type of way the next
right,
big idea. It's going to come to you in a flash of inspiration or in a dream.
right, right.
And if your whole life is telling you to block that part of yourself off, then it's never going to happen. So you have to
So
work
that's
on taking that away, tearing
okay,
that barrier down. You know what I
right.
mean?
And I think that even us, I mean, yeah, I know what you mean, and I think that maybe us talking will help. I think it already has helped to some in some way too. For me, like that's important. I think in that
Yeah.
way, like, and you need. It's also important. I think that you need to know that, like, when you talk to me, at least my personal, it helps me. Whether it's whether we're on the same exact page or not, whatever you're saying to me introduces myself to kind of look at it from a different
Right.
way. You know what I
I
mean?
mean, it
And that
helps me too. I
straight
mean,
up, dude.
I'm interested in what you have to say about it too, because you have your own
Yeah,
perspective as well. But just Abe, just using these conversations as like a springboard for me to put
right.
ideas out there, and for you to,
And that's right.
give
And that's
your
what I was
aspect to it, and then we refine it and continue forward. And
straight up,
that's
dude.
part of
That's
it.
the outcast, boy. That's what the outcast is about. And I love it. So,
Yeah.
that's cool, man. You've been on top of your shit though, it sounds like. I mean, you always are, but I like the fact that you are still kind of moving with it. You didn't like,
Yeah.
you kind of,
No.
it's not like a
Well,
phase, like,
when I told you I was trying to break out of that, and that was my
yeah,
direction, I wasn't joking. Like I really am. I'm out here
straight
doing
up.
it now for real.
Straight up,
You
brother.
know.
That's what's up,
I
man. For
mean,
real.
and because the more I do it,
We're coming,
the
yeah.
better the results are.
Straight up, man. I'm super glad to hear that, really. You sound better. You mean just your spirit, your voice, like, for real.
Yeah.
As far
No,
as,
I was pretty sad back
yeah. So I'm
a
glad
few
to
months
thanks.
ago. But yeah,
Yeah.
no, it's I you know I
It's part of it.
it's not a destination. I mean, it's a process. I mean, I
Right.
have a goal in mind, obviously, but
Right. It's
it's
part of it,
about
you
how
know.
you're walking through it.
Like you said, balance. Balance is such
Yeah.
a. I love that. There's
Right.
such a emphasis on that word today because when you said it, I was like, that is kind of. That's a very important.
Well, that's a perfect. I think that's a good place to end it off for this leg of it, because there's
Yeah.
what another word you could use for that is temperance, which is one of the tarot cards, and that it speaks to that exact nature of balance right there.
Really,
Having
temperance.
one, yeah, it's like an angel with one foot in the water, one foot on the land,
Yeah.
and it's pouring water from one cup to another. That symbolizes
Okay.
you're refining your subconscious. You're keeping one foot in the spiritual, one foot in the material, but you're
Gotcha.
bringing that balance to it.
Yeah.
And so
Did you
that's
pull
one
that
of the
card today, or have you just
no,
you?
but I just
Yeah.
know that that's one of them. I haven't touched the
That's
cards yet
cool
today.
though. See, that's that shit. I love it. Cause see, that's the
Yeah.
stuff I want to know. I like. I don't know. I've always kind of been into that. So that's
Well, that's what
dope.
I mean by those archetypes. That's one of
Right.
the archetypes of the path is that you have to have that balance.
Yeah. Balance is key right now, I think.
Yeah.
Trying to find my balance. Remember that song, Atmosphere? Trying to
Yeah.
find my
Oh yeah.
balance. Man,
No,
shit.
they knew what was up back then.
So I got to figure out how to get a mic because I'm about to get this phone to my daddy because I got to work.
All right.
I
No,
think
that's
I
a
may
good that's a
have
good
one.
spot. Yeah.
No, but I mean, I gotta. I'm gonna try to find a mic this morning. If I don't, it's because I'm a goddamn druggie. No,
Yeah.
but I'm gonna try. I should be able to find something.
All right. Well,
Um,
I got to get going anyway. We're gonna go out and go to
yeah,
the.
y'all go enjoy. Yeah, dude, go. It's probably cold as fuck out there, huh?
It's like 68. It's
Oh
getting
yeah,
there.
it's getting
Yeah.
cold out here too in Texas. But yeah, y'all go enjoy that, man. Glad to hear
Yep.
that things are going better. Let's talk a little bit whenever you get back here.
Okay. Yeah. I'll hit you.
All right, bro. All love. Talk to you later.
All right, bro. See ya.
All right, bro. Bye.